Hello everybody on YouTube, and of course if you're live, you're watching on Twitch. Welcome to Amaz's first Magic review of a new set that's coming out. It's Court 2019. Of course you can let me know if you guys want more of these or what you think about them or how I can improve them later. But basically what we're going to do is we're going to be rating cards for the limited environment in Core Set 2019, okay? So this is basically in draft mode and in sealed, okay? This is more gonna be in draft because in sealed, you don't actually get a lot of choices. You don't need to pick this card over that card or whatever, right? But in draft mode in Magic, you actually do need to kind of select cards over some things and stuff. So my version of a card review is that I'm gonna organize all the colors of cards into rows, right? So we're gonna start with artifacts because they are colorless and they fit into every deck. But there's gonna be 3 rows, right? The first row are the good cards and the cards you want, right? You actively want your deck. The second row are like mediocre cards that you don't really mind if they're in your deck or not. And the third row is kind of like the iffy cards or even the sideboard cards, you know, cards that you might want to bring in against a specific opponent or cards that, you know, are really not, they don't really do that much in most decks, right? So, as you can see, this is my artifact list. All of these creatures are really, really powerful at the top here. Gargoyle Sentinel I have as the best uncommon. These are common and uncommon artifacts, right? So I have the best uncommon artifact. It is... Okay, I need to... Alright, first time doing this. My magnifying glass is not really working properly. Okay, there you go. It's really good. It's 3 mana, 3/3 defender, so it can't attack. But you can pay 3 mana to make it attack and also gains flying. So not only is this really good because 3 mana, 3/3 just, you know, it's gonna trade and block everything. It also can attack in the air for some mana, right? So that's actually really good. Of course, Meteor Golem is also really good. 7 mana, 3/3, and when you play it, it just destroys anything your opponent controls. Like, these are 2 really, really good cards. So yeah, these are just fine. I'm not gonna go over every card. I'm just gonna go over the ones that are kind of interesting, yeah? Bookcase is also really good. Because, you know, I'm assuming, I'm gonna go ahead and say that Court 2019, you're gonna have a lot of board stalls. So there's gonna be a lot of boards where nobody can attack each other at all. So then Bookcase can actually help you get your creatures back, you know, through to attack your opponents. Wow, I am really bad at this magnifying glass thing. So yeah, I will pick this pretty highly too. It's interesting to note that Manalith is good if you're playing, like, you know, a very rampy 3-color deck, especially with the dragons that come out. Fountain of Renewal is also pretty important in the life gain deck. So this is not in the tier 3 row. This is actually going to be pretty important if you got like some Ajani's Pridemate or Regal Bloodlord, the cards we're going to see later, that actually cares about you gaining life. But usually in most decks, you don't really care about gaining a life each turn, for example, right? So those are pretty much the standout cards for this. All right, onwards, next slide. We have the rare artifacts. Core 2019 doesn't have a lot of good artifacts. The only good one that's above the curve is Sigiled Sword of Valor. It is basically going to be good in any deck, right? This is a 3 mana artifact that equips for 3. And then when you equip a creature, it has +2 attack and vigilance. It becomes a knight, but who cares about that, right? Like, who cares if it's a knight? However, every time it attacks, you also get a 2/2 white knight creature that's also attacking, and it also has vigilance. So this is really ridiculous because every time you attack, you get a 2/2. If you put this on the flyer, it gets even more ridiculous, right? So this is just like, you just insta pick this whenever you see this in your draft, yeah. Chaos Swan is actually pretty interesting in that I think there is a ramp deck. So if you're a deck that, you know, has a lot of mana dorks and gains a lot of mana and stuff like that, this can actually be not bad. Remember that you might want to cast Chaos Wand in response to your opponent playing a creature, because especially if you're playing blue, right? Because if your opponent's playing blue, they play a creature and you respond with this, you might actually get to exile their Essence Scatter or their Cancel, and you can counter their own spell with this, right? Because Chaos Wand, you actually cast your opponent's cards without paying for them. So that's interesting to note. The other cards here are kind of unplayable. Yeah, none of these are too good, so I'm gonna stay away from them. wow, this review is going super fast. I love it. All right, onwards to multicolored cards. Lots of multicolored cards are actually tier 1 cards. They're really, really good. And they also let us know what the specific colors are. The best one is Skyrider Patrol by far, okay? 4 mana, 2/3 flying. At the beginning of combat, you can pay a green and a blue, so 2 mana. And if you do, you buff another creature, give it +1/+1 counter, and it also gains flying. This is just ridiculous. Like, you play this, you make your own creatures bigger, you keep on smacking face. I don't know how your opponents can win if you can activate this a couple of times. They basically need to kill this because it's a 4 mana 2/3 flyer, right? Ridiculous card. Alright. Next card is also ridiculous. Regal Bloodlord. I have this as the number 2. It's a 4 mana 2/4 flying. At the end of at the beginning of each end step, so at the end of each turn, if you gain some life, you get a 1/1 black bat token that also has flying. So this basically produces a swarm of bats. And yeah, it only asks you to gain some life. There's a lot of cards that gain life here. So yeah, this card is also ridiculous. So white-black is all about gaining life. Green-blue is just about playing efficient creatures, I guess. I'm going to actually go through each of these cards because all the multicolored cards are pretty cool. Alright, next up we have Poison Tip Archer. 4 mana 2/3 with Reach and Death Touch. That's already really good, right? So it basically kills whatever, right? You can block with whatever and kill whatever. And whenever another creature dies, each opponent loses 1 life. It includes your opponent's creatures. It includes your own creatures. So, like, this is also just ridiculous. It's just a 1-for-1, and until this happens, until you need to trade this off, your opponent just keeps on losing life. So, yeah, really, really good. We also have blue-black. Psychic Symbiont. Sounds like something from Spider-Man. For 6 mana, you get a 3/3 flyer. And when you enter the battlefield, they discard a card and you draw a card. So, this is the definition of a 3-for-1, right? You get a 3/3 flying, they discard a card, and you draw a card. Lots of value in one card, right? And especially if you can, like, you know, bring this back from the graveyard or something like that. Black has some, you know, graveyard recursion, stuff like that. That's gonna be great. Alright, Enigma Trick is on Amonkhet, and this card was such a beating. This card is not gonna be as good in core set because there's gonna be less cycling spells, you know, in general, but there is still Tormenting Voice. Tormenting Voice and Enigma Drake is gonna be such an insane combo that, like, this is just gonna hit for a lot, especially if you build your deck around it, right? As a 3 mana 1/4 fly, it's already really good. And if you have 2 instants or sorcery cards in your graveyard, it's gonna get better. So basically, it's just gonna get better and better. Enigma Drake is really, really good. Draconic Disciple, also a tier 1 multicolor card. 3 mana for 2/2. It's a new card. You can tap to add 1 mana of any color, so it ramps you up. And in the late game, you can sacrifice this, pay 7 mana, and then you can make a 5/5 dragon with flying. So late game, you actually get to upgrade this into a better card, and early game, you get more mana to spend your cards. Like, yeah, this is just what you want to do in red green, because red green is the ramp color. If you like to play a lot of big stuff, then you'd certainly want to, you know, keep an eye out for this card. And finally, the other tier 1 card is Heroic Reinforcements. It's the worst of the tier 1 cards, but still really good, right? 4 mana, Boros colors. Create 2 1/1s. And then until end of turn, creatures you control get +1/+1 and gain haste. So what this card effectively does is you create 2 2/2 soldiers, right? Because the soldiers also get the +1/+1. And they gain haste. So you actually just buff your entire team, spawn 4 attack worth of stuff, and you just smoke your opponent. Like, you can actually kill your opponent out of nowhere with this. So whenever you're playing against Boros in core set, you might have to be a bit careful because they can just, like, kill you out of nowhere. Alright. The tier 2 cards are still reasonable, so if you're playing these color pairs, you still probably want them. Aerial Engineer is the white-blue one. For 4 mana, you get a 2/4. And as long as you control an artifact, this gets +2 attack and it's flying, so it becomes a 4/4 flying for 4 mana, which is very efficient. However, the artifacts for this set is a little bit like worse than normal sets, so you do need to kind of work a little bit to get this requirement. There is a blue card that makes a Thopter that we're gonna see later that is probably the best combo of this card, but you know, it's not like insane, right? Because you do need to work around this. The white-blue Skies deck might maybe just not have a single artifact. And finally, we have a Brawl Bash Ogre. For 4 mana, you get a 3/3 Menace, which is really good. And as additional bonus, whenever it attacks, you can sacrifice another creature. And if you do, this gets +2/+2 until end of turn. Very good combo with Act of Treason, or things that recur themselves, like Reassembling Skeleton. So Act of Treason, you steal your opponent's creature, and then you attack with this, and then you sacrifice the creature you stole. And that's just makes Act of Treason a removal spell, right? So that's really, really strong. So yeah, it's like a red-black sacrifice thing. But you know, if you don't have that, it's a 4-mana 3/3 Menace, which is still not bad, but it's not like an insta-pick like the other cards here. And finally, we have the Lone Satyr Enchanter that's not that good. Even if you're green and white, you might not even play this. For 3 mana, you get a 2/2. And every time you cast an enchantment spell, you draw a card. The enchantments in this set are pretty good, but like the reward isn't that insane. It's just 3 mana 2/2 draw a card, right? Like if you activate it once, it's nothing really insane. You have to really draw 2 cards. And then you also need to have specifically enchantment cards. So I'm pretty down on this one. I wouldn't pick this really highly, even if I'm green-white. I would probably pick a good green or another good white common over this. So yeah, those are the multicolored ones, which also gives us a little bit of hints on what the color pairings do in this limited set. Before we get onto our actual colors, there are 5 really cool dragons that are all in Mythic. So Mythic is going to be very hard to open. But if you do open one, then you're very lucky. And these 5 dragons are all bonkers, right? They're actually all tier 1 if you can cast them. But for the sake of clarity, I organized them into 2 rows. So the best dragon to open in limited is probably going to be Mythix Asmati. For 6 mana, black, red, and green. So all these dragons are 3 colors, so very hard to cast. But since they're very expensive, it's very likely that you can cast them late game, right? Because you have more lands and stuff. But Mythix is a 6 mana 6/6 with flying. Whenever it attacks, you choose a permanent for each player. They sacrifice them, and then they reveal a top card of the deck, and then put it into play if it's a permanent card. So whenever this attacks, you basically remove whatever their biggest thing is, and you also target one of your lands, and then you do the RNG flip, right? So you get to turn your lands into big stuff or like actual creatures late game, and your opponent actually loses one of their biggest guys every time this attacks. Like this is just bonkers, right? So yeah. If you're in black, red, and green, and you open this, then perfect. This is, in my opinion, the best dragon out of the 5. All right, Nicol Bolas is the Grixis one. For 4 mana, you get a 4/4 flying. When this enters the battlefield, each opponent discards a card. So this is basically your opponent. So it's already a 2-for-1. And then you can pay 7 mana, exile Nicol Bolas, return him to the battlefield, and it transforms into dun. As you can see, I wasn't really prepared for this. Alright, it transforms into Nicol Bolas the Arisen. It becomes a Planeswalker. So it's actually like a extra player kind of, right? So he has 7 loyalty, so 7 life, which is really good. And you can activate loyalty ability once every turn. +2, so you can give yourself +2 health, and you can draw 2 cards. -3 and deal 10 damage to a creature or planeswalker, so remove a creature or planeswalker. -4 can resurrect any creature or planeswalker from any graveyard. And if you get to -12, you remove all the cards from their library except for the bottom card. And once again, in Magic, when you can't draw a card, you lose the game immediately, right? So obviously, this card is really stacked up. Really, really stacked. It's gonna be pretty hard to cast this in turn 4 because you do need all 3 colors in turn 4, which is actually a harder ask than say the other dragons, right? Like, for example, these other dragons are like 6 mana and 7 mana, so it's more likely that you're gonna get all these colors. But even then, if you drop Nicol Bolas in turn 6 or whatever, it's still gonna be ridiculous, right? It's a 4/4 flying, which is already insane, right? And it discards a card from your opponent. If you flip it in limited game, you just win the game, right? Like, if you can actually do this, you win. So, yeah, Nicol Bolas is great. Alright, Chromium is the next one. 7 mana, Esper colors. It's a 7/7. S flash, so you can cast it on your opponent's turn. It can't counter it. It also flies because it's dragon, obviously. And as an extra defensive ability, you can discard a card anytime. It turns into a 1/1 human, but it gains hexproof. So if your opponent wants to use a kill spell on this, you can just discard a card and make it have hexproof, and then they can't kill anymore because hexproof says it can't be the target of things that your opponent controls, right? So it protects itself really, really well. So Chromium is also pretty good. All right, Archaeologist is the build around. It's the build around dragon in back colors. 4 mana for 3/5 flying with vigilance. It's pretty cool. And whenever a creature of defender enters the battlefield, you draw a card. So the walls that we're gonna see later, you draw a card every time you cast the wall. And each creature you control of defender assigns combat damage equal to its toughness and can also attack as if it doesn't have defender. So basically, if you have a 0/5 wall, it becomes a 5/5 attacking wall. So you get to throw your walls at your opponent. So if you get Archaeologist, then you can draft a lot of these defenders that are actually in the set. There's a common 0/5 blue wall that you can actually turn into. That's really, really good. There's also a green wall that it also works. Do keep in mind that this is only affects defender creatures, so it doesn't make your, if you have a creature that's like a 1/4, it doesn't make it into a 4/4. It only affects defender cards. But of course, by itself, it's already really good. It's a 4 mana 3/5 flying vigilance. Just remember, you need to get the right mana for this. And finally, we got Palladium Wars. It's a 6 mana 6/6 dragon with flying, vigilance, and trample. So whatever, flample is kind of like a little overkill. And she also has hexproof if she didn't deal damage yet. So basically, when you play her, she's always gonna live. And then when you attack with her once, or when she gets chump blocked by something, then it loses hexproof, and then your opponent can kill her. So 1 guaranteed attack, pretty good. Anyways, all these dragons are really good. It's just that remember when you draft these guys, make sure you have a little bit more fixing than you normally would, or that you're green, because green has a very good fixing, right? So, for example, Nicol Bolas and Chromium might be harder to cast than the other dragons, because the other dragons have green. Onwards to white. All right, white is really stacked. As you can see, there are 6 cards in tier 1, which you would be very, very happy to pick up. Tier 2 cards are kind of normal, and these are the tier 3 cards, as we can see. I also ordered them in terms of the best ones in the left side and the worst one on the right side. So my number 1 white comet is Pegasus Courser. We saw this in Dominaria and it was bonkers, and I assume this is going to be bonkers as well in Corset, because Corset is a little bit lower power level. Really powerful. 3 mana 1/3 flying, and whenever it attacks, it also makes something else attacking that's also gives it flying. So you just smoke your opponent's face, and your opponent can't block because it's flying, right? Ridiculous card. Luminous Bonds is number 2. You basically make something can't attack or block, you remove from the game. And for number 3, I have Star Crown Stag. For 4 mana, you get a 3/3. Whenever it attacks, you tap a creature that your opponent controls. So you basically make it unable to block. So as you can see, all the white cards basically say your opponents can't block. So white is a very aggressive color. You play 1 drop, 2 drop, 3 drop, and then you just attack their face and they can't block and you win the game. So very, very strong. All these cards are also very strong. Gallant Cavalry is a reprint from Dominaria called the Cavalry. Angel of Dawn is a reprint from Dawn Feather Eagle from Kaladesh, I want to say, or Ether Revolt. I'm not really sure, but they were both really, really good. And Take Vengeance is actually very sweet because not only, when you're attacking, that your opponent wants to, attack you back because there might be a lot of racing situation. This also combos with Star Crown Stag, so you can actually tap their creature yourself and then use Take Vengeance afterwards too. So that's really good. The tier 2 of white cards, they're all kind of vanilla creatures. Do notice that there's a lot of life gain here, especially the first two. 2 mana 1/3 lifelink and 4 mana 2/4 gain life when it comes to the play. All very powerful, even if you're not in the life gain deck, because they're creatures themselves, right? So that's all really powerful. Another thing to note is that Night's Pledge is actually pretty good in some cases. 2 mana +2/+2 on a creature is, pretty sweet. Helps you, hit a cross of people. And of course, Mighty Leap also deserves a little mention because, once again, if there's a lot of stall board, you can play this on the big creature and attack for lethal. You can also use this before your opponent attacks with some flyers and then block with the Mighty Leap creature as well, which is good. All right. Onwards to the third row. These are all kind of meh. You don't really want them. You might want to pick one up for the sideboard, for example, like Invoke the Divine. You might want to, pick one up if your opponent has a very strong artifact. Revitalize also deserves a little special mention because this is pretty much unplayable outside of the white-black life gain deck. And this actually might become a combat trick. So I wouldn't even count this one out. So overall, white is pretty stacked in the commons, right? Like these cards are all ridiculous. So, I would be happy with any of these cards to first pick here. And these two are really good if I'm already in white. And these three, the third row is kind of like filler cards or whatever. Next up, we have the uncommons for white. Also pretty stacked. Number 1 uncommon for white is Hero Master's Cage. 4 mana, you play this and you exile anything from your opponent. You just remove from the game. Hero of Faith is number 2 for 5 mana. You get a 4/3 flying, and whenever he attacks, you get 2 life. That's insane, right? It's kind of like you gain 2 life every turn, right? It's a 4/3 flyer. That's ridiculous, okay? And finally, Knightly Valor is number 3. For 5 mana, you make something +2. You make something +2/+2 in Vigilance, and you also make a 2/2 White Knight. So that's a lot of stats on one card. Really, really strong. I'll be very happy with Ajani's Pridemate because this is the payoff for life gain. It's a 2 mana 2/2, which is already good. And whenever you gain life, it gets a counter. So we saw so many ways to gain life, right? So this is going to be bonkers. And Bugler is not bad card advantage. Tier 2 of cards, also pretty good. Like, they're pretty reasonable in your deck, right? Shieldmere gains you some life. Novice Knight is a very good early blocker, and it can turn into a relevant attacker later on. Aether Shield Artificer is good if you have the artifact creatures, and the best artifact creatures are the Thopters that blue cards make. So, I kind of treat this more as a white-blue card. Make a Stand is good on attack and defense because if your opponent has, like, a murder or something, you can actually play this in response and protect your creature. This actually does it to all your creatures, so also a blowout if your opponent has a board wipe. And Leonin Vanguard is okay. You kind of just play this as life gain more than not. And the cards that are not quite playable are Ajani's Welcome, which is still reasonable in a life gain deck. Just make sure you don't play too many of these effects that don't affect the board. And Aegis of the Heavens is 2 mana, give a creature +1 attack, and it doesn't die this turn. Because, +7 health is kind of who cares, whatever. So, yeah. Alright. White rares are next. And white rares are also very exciting. I have Resplendent Angel as the best white rare in Mythic. I do need a magnifying glass for this, because it's a little bit small. Alright. So, Angel. 3 mana, 3/3 flying, which is bonkers. And at the beginning of each end step, if you gain 5 or more life, you get to make a Sarah Angel, a 4/4 flying vigilance. What? That's crazy. Oh, by the way, if you don't have ways to gain 5 or more life, you can also pay 6 mana to give this angel +2/+2 in lifelink. So because of 5/5 lifelink, it gains 5 life and it makes an angel herself anyways. So yeah, that actually seems ridiculous. you want to just slam jam this. Next up, we have Lina War Leader, which I have as number 2. 4 mana, 4/4. Whenever he attacks, you get 2 white cat creature tokens of lifelink that are also attacking. So, if your opponent can't deal with this, you just spawn unlimited cats. That's also ridiculous. And finally, we have Ajani. Ajani is a very good planeswalker that really helps if you're ahead, yeah? 4 mana for 4 loyalty, +1, support 2, so put counter on 2 creatures. -2, you get to resurrect a creature from your graveyard that's cost 2 or less. And then if you get to -7, you win the game because you create 3 1/1 cat creatures of lifelink every single turn. So yeah, I think this is very strong. If you have some sort of board, that this race basically says, you know, attack me or die, kind of, right? Because it actually +1s to 5 loyalty. Yeah, this is also pretty bonkers. And the other cards we're gonna skim over once again. Mentor of the Meek is really, really good. Really good. It works insanely well with Gallant Cavalry because it has 2 triggers. And most white creatures actually have 2 power less, so really, really strong. Cleansing Nova is our board wipe, and Valiant Knight is just a very well static creature. There's also a lot of knights in the set, so yeah, you would play this. Alright. Second tier, we have Lina. Lina is a kind of a weird card. For 6 mana, you get a 3/3 creature. And then when she enters the battlefield, you get a 1/1 soldier for each non-token creature you control. So basically, each creature you control spawns a 1/1. And you can also sack her to make creatures you control with power less than Lina's power gain indestructible. It's such a it's a weird 6-drop. I don't envision it to be too good, but if you have a lot of creatures, then you just double your board, and then you can just smack your opponent next turn. So really good with if you have any board pumps. You know, like if you have Inspired Charge or something, it gets a little better. Johnny's Last Stand is a 4 mana 4/4 flying that has a little bit of delay into it, so it's still reasonable, but the delay makes me kind of not want to pick it as highly. And we also have a 2 mana 2/1 flyer that doesn't really have text. This doesn't really affect limited at all, so 2 mana 2/1 flyer is still good. And finally, we have Sun Cleanser, which is just a 2 mana 1/4. It removes all counters from a card. But in this set, there's not a lot of counters, right? So it's just a 2 mana 1/4. And Isolate is an unplayable card. You just never want to play this card. So if you open this as your rare and sealed, then I am very sorry. So yeah, that's basically white. So white is actually bonkers. White has a lot of good playable cards. All right, onwards to blue. Blue has some pretty good cards too at tier 1. I have Aven Windmage as the best one. Aven Windmage is a 3 mana 2/2 flying. Whenever you cast an instant or sorcery, you get he gets +1/+1 to end a turn. So it's kind of like prowess, right? 3 mana 2/2 flying is already really good, and you have some instant spells. You can actually debate your opponent in combat, so very strong. Dwindle is number 2. We have Enchantment. It gives a creature -6 attack, and then when the creature blocks, it gets destroyed. So it's effectively a removal spell because -6 just makes it 0 attack, right? Thank you, Luckies, for the 12 months of Prime. And yeah, Dwindle is just a removal card, which is really, really sick. And now, we also have Omen Speaker as number 3. Omen Speaker is great. 3 mana 1/3, it's just a creature on the battlefield. And when she enters the battlefield, you get to scry 2, you get to fix your draws. Man, 2 mana 1/3 in blue is really, really good already. And you also get to fix your draws. So that is really, really good. I have it over Adobe. God damn it. I have it over all these other cards because, well, one of the ways to lose limited is because you actually don't smooth out your draw step. I don't want to update this! Stop! Oh, I have to update? God damn it, man. But yeah, 2 mana 1/3 is really good blocker on the ground. And it basically enables all your other flyers as well. And late game, you really don't mind drawing an Omen Speaker because you can just remove your lands, and then Omen Speaker kind of becomes like a draw spell, right? So I love Omen Speaker, and yeah, I would draft this really, really high. We also have a 4 mana 3/2 flying for blue, 3 mana 1/2 that makes a 1/1 color stop to artifact. Ooh, the artifact payoff is here in blue. Essence Scatter is always good. Divination is also always good. Draw 2, counter target creature spell. We always see that. Disperse is actually what I think to be pretty good in this set. There's going to be a lot of auras floating around. I think this is going to be an aura-driven set because green has an insane aura, and Disperse is kind of a tempo play, right? You can combine this with like Divination so that you don't actually lose the card advantage too much. And yeah, you can also blow someone out in combat if they actually use a combat trick with Disperse. So I think this is going to be better than a normal set. Salvager Secrets is fine, it's just card advantage. It's a bit expensive, but still good. Skull of Stars, of course, rewards you for having some artifacts. 3 mana 2/3 in the ground is fine, not as good as the 2 mana 1/3. Because I mean, if you're gonna have a 3 attack creature, a 3 health creature on the ground, you really don't care about its attack too much. Like 1 and 2 is not a big difference, and it doesn't also have any effects. So, whatever. Toy Lost is very expensive removal. For 5 mana, you put anything on top of their owner's library. So they skip a draw, and you get to remove something temporarily, but still good. But it's just a 5 mana, it's really expensive. So you have to be very careful about having too many of these. Chill is fine. Anticipate's fine. Like, these are all reasonable. And then for tier 3, I have Cancel. Cancel is usually... Cancel is better in sets that have more powerful cards. And in core sets, like, the overall power level of this set is kind of low, right? Like, you have, like, 4 mana 3/2s, 3 mana 2/2s, whatever. So, Cancel gets a little bit worse. But if your opponent has, like, an unbeatable card, like a large dragon that we just saw, then Cancel becomes a little bit better. 2 mana 0/5 wall doesn't really do much. 6 mana 4/6 that can't... That has the extra ability of 7 mana, can't be blocked this turn. This is reasonable. Like, if you're actually looking for a way to end the game, you can pick this up. But if I'm playing blue, I would look to my other cards to find a better finisher, or I can just finish in the air, right? So a big dum-dum is not really the like blue signature thing. So I don't have this too high. And of course, 1 mana creature, not that good, and Ghost Form is also kind of not that good. But yeah, the blue commons that are on tier 1, I think are pretty good. Like, they're pretty sick. What about the uncommons for blue? Uncommons in blue are actually insane. There are no tier 3 cards. All of the uncommons in blues are playable. So that is pretty cool. The best one I have is Exclusion Mage. For 3 mana, you get a 2/2, and you bounce something back to their hand. Such a good tempo play. This is ridiculous, alright? Usually these effects cost 4, and at 4 mana, they're still good. So it's gonna be insane. The second best is Horizon Scholar. For 6 mana, you get a 4/4 flying, and you scry 2 when it enters the battlefield. Blue likes to scry, and once again, scrying late game is gonna be so powerful. You lose all your lands, and you get all the actual spells. Very powerful. It's also a 4/4 flying. And for number 3, I actually have Switcheroo. It's a very interesting card. Probably a card that people are very afraid to play it, but trust me, it's really, really strong. It's for 5 mana, and let me see if I can get the magnifying glass here. Alright, here you go. For 5 mana, exchange control of 2 target creatures. So, it's basically mind control in a sense, right? You give them one of your stupid 1/1 Thopters, or you give them a 1/2 that's on the ground, or you give them an Omen Speaker or whatever, and then you take the dragon. You take the Colossal Dreadmaw. This card is great. And you're playing blue. You're gonna have shitty creatures. So, Switcheroo, very, very strong. We also have some other tier 1 cards that are really strong. We have a Departed Deccan, 2 mana 2/2 that can't be blocked by anything except for spirits, so it just goes face. Sleep actually taps all your opponent's creatures, and they don't attack for 1 turn. So really good for board stalls. And Sift is never bad. 4 mana, draw 3, discard 1 is just very decent, especially for late game. You can give them token creatures, yeah. You can give them any creatures. You give them a shitty creature, you get a big creature. Yes. For tier 2, I have Psychic Corrosion as a tier 2 card. This is actually secretly really good, because in Origins, my favorite Origins card was Sphinx's Tutelage. It's a better version of this, but this is still reasonable. For 3 mana, Whenever you draw a card, your opponent mills 2 cards from their library into the graveyard. What this effectively does is that you put a 10-turn clock on your opponent if you play on turn 3, right? Because they draw a card, they mill 2 every turn, right? So if you divide it up, they usually have around 30 cards by turn 3. So you basically, in a sense, set your opponent's life to 10, and then they lose 1 life every turn. You just play a defense game when you play this, right? You play this, and then you just don't attack at all. You just like wait for your opponent to die because you put so much pressure on them. A card that can single-handedly win the game is just ridiculous. So Psychic Corrosion, I think a lot of people are gonna just glance over this. You have to this is a very good reason to put enchantment removal in your deck because this is a very, very strong card. We have Ether Tunnel. Give a creature can't be blocked. I mean, it's reasonable, you know, it's fine on board stalls once again. Surge Mare is a 2-mana 0/5 that can buff itself and it can loot when it attacks. It's not too good because you have to pay mana to make it have attack. You know, 2 mana to give it +2, -2. But, you know, it's still fine as a blocker. Like 2 mana 0/5 that can attack. A little bit of, you know, synergy, why not, you know. Animator can be a beating as well. For 3 mana, you get a 1/3. It turns an artifact you control to a 5/5 until this leaves the battlefield. 3 mana 5/5 is pretty OP, but once again, you do need to find more artifacts to make it work. And once again, the artifact in this set is pretty bad, but once again, this is really powerful if you can pull it off. Mirror Image is fine. It's a very big liability because it only copies creatures that you control. You cannot mirror image your opponent's copies, so you have to be a bit more careful of that. I would recommend this in green decks because you can copy a big creature, especially a green creature of trample would be a really good copy, but you gotta be a little bit more careful of this. And finally, a Bone to Ash. For 4 mana, counter a creature spell and draw a card, which is like ridiculous, right? That's like a 2-for-1, but it's 4 mana counter. If your opponent is not stupid and they see you passing with 4 mana, they can play around this, okay? 4 mana counter spells are usually a little bit yikesies, so don't play too much of this in draft. In sealed, I think this is fine. Sealed is a bit slower, but you have to be a bit careful about this in draft. Next up, we have the rares and mythics. I have Patient Rebuilding as the best blue card in the set. Patient Rebuilding is bonkers. It's actually bonkers. Let me have a little bit of a magnifying glass here. For 5 mana, you play an enchantment. At the beginning of your upkeep, so at the beginning of your turn, target opponent puts the top 3 cards of their library into the graveyard. So you mill 3, and whenever they mill a land, you draw a card. That's ridiculous. This is actually ridiculous. I like, this is actually ridiculous. It's a mill strategy and you also get to draw more cards, right? This is like, you play this, your opponent has so much pressure to kill you if they can't remove the enchantment. Of course, there's like Naturalize to remove the enchantment, Invoke the Divine to remove the enchantment. But like, if you play this, your opponent just goes like, how do I win the game in X turns? Because you just count how much cards they have in the library, and you just need to survive that many turns to win the game. And that's it. And you just win. So Patient Rebuilding is a complete bomb. Tezzeret is the best Planeswalkers in the set, in my opinion. For 5 mana, you get a 5 loyalty Planeswalker, which is just, that's insanely high. It's like he's not going anywhere. +1, make a Thopter. So you get a 1/1 Thopter. You can 0, so it doesn't even change his loyalty. He can't even minus. You draw a card. And if you control 3 or more artifacts, you draw 2 cards instead. So card advantage. And then -9, at the beginning of your end step, you search your library. So you pick up your library. You pick any permanent card. You put it on the battlefield. You do this every turn as a -9. So I don't know, like getting to -9 for Tezzeret doesn't seem impossible in limited either because her +1 is so powerful, right? 1/1 flying creatures, he can protect himself, and you can also smork with the 1/1 flyers. This is just insane too. And number 3, I have Jin of Wishes. 5 mana 4/4 flying, so air elemental. There's also 3 wishes on the Jin when it comes into play. You can pay 4 mana, remove a wish counter, and then reveal the top card and play for free. Okay, so it's a 5 mana 4/4 flying, right? Which is like bonkers. And for 4 mana, play something free. You get to do it 3 times. That is ridiculous. One thing to note is that if you activate this on your opponent's turn, you can't actually play a land. So if you really want to play a land, then you might want to activate on your turn. So yeah, but then of course you can ambush with this too, right? You can actually have it so that your opponent attacks with their creatures, you activate this, and then you put a 6/6 onto play, and then you block with the 6/6. Then that would be pretty good. But yeah, this Jin of Wishes is also bonkers. The blue rares are insane, yo. Alright, Wind Raider Sphinx is also tier 1. 7 mana 3/7. That whenever a creature of flying attacks you, you draw a card. This includes your opponent's creatures too. So if your opponent has the balls to attack your flying creatures, you also draw a card. So, I mean, that's kind of what you want for 7 mana, you know? And now we have the tier 2 cards. Mystic Archaeologist is a better Azure Mage in Limited. 2 mana 2/1. You can also pay 5 mana to draw 2 cards. That is just... I mean, you activate this once you win the game. Alright, like... It's a 2 mana 2/1. What do you want? You'd be happy playing a 2 mana 2/1. Well, not super happy, but the effect makes you very happy for it. So you pick this. Supreme Phantom. It's a 2 mana 1/3 flying with flavor text because there's not a lot of spirits in this set. So, but it's still a 2 mana 1/3 flying. So, you know, whatever. You still play it. Sai, Master Thopterus, 3 mana 1/4. Whenever you cast an artifact, you create a 1/1 Thopter, and you can sacrifice 2 artifacts to draw a card. Once again, this will be higher in some sets, but in this particular set, the artifacts are not as good, so you really need to kind of work around this if you really want to go off of Sai. And finally, Metamorphic Alteration. For 2 mana, you enchant a creature, and then it becomes a copy of another creature. So there's a lot of cute stuff you can do with this. You can enchant your opponent's creature, shrink it down to size, so it's kind of like a removal spell. You can also enchant one of your own small creatures, make it bigger later game. It's okay, but just remember that this card is not a creature by itself. And finally, we have the 3 bottom tier rares and mythics, which are actually very bottom tier. They're actually quite bad. One of the machine draws cards if you have a very high costing artifact. Once again, artifacts are not that good. I would probably not play this. Mistwalker is a 1 mana 1/1. That's really bad. And Omniscience is a 10 mana card. You can cast spells from your hand without paying their mana cost. So you cast everything for free, but for Christ's sake, if you have 10 mana, you can just spend 10 mana to cast that stuff instead. Okay? So you don't want to really put any of these in your limited decks. Alright, so people are asking for the Jin, right? Yeah, you can actually play cards on your opponent's turn without actually adhering to the rules of the card, right? It says you may cast it. You may cast the card without paying its mana cost. It doesn't say you may cast that card this turn. You may play that card, right? Wait, does it actually say that? I'm pretty sure you may play that card. Actually, I might be wrong. Okay. If you wish to play the exile card, you must play it while the last ability is resolving. You can't play it later in the turn. A spell cast this way may be cast at a time you normally wouldn't be able to cast a spell. Yeah, so you can cast a creature spell on your opponent's turn too. So yeah, it actually works that way. But you cannot cast a land, because you can only play lands on your turn. So yeah, if you want to play a land, then activate it on your turn. If you want to ambush your opponent, then activate it on their turn. Onwards to black. Now, black got a little bit shafted on the commons. I'm going to put myself here now. Wow, I like how my webcam is just like, you know, bouncing around and stuff. Yeah, black got really shafted. There's only 3 tier 1 commons. The first one is Delicious Caress. For 5 mana, destroy a creature, gain 3 life. That's just removal. Secondly, I have Skymarch Bloodletter. 3 mana 2/2 flying that sucks your opponent for 1 life when it enters the battlefield. And finally, with 4 mana, give a creature -3/-3. These are just like way above the rest, and these are all tier 2. So yeah, black commons, you gotta need a little bit more work on your other colors of the commons, because black commons are not premium, for example. The tier 2 black cards are still fine. Skeleton Archer is a Skeleton Archer. 4 mana 3/3, deal 1 damage when it comes into play, so really good at sniping things with 1 health. Abnormal Endurance is really good. Re-triggers end of the battlefield effects, so keep this in mind. Doom Dissenter is a reprint. 2 mana 1/1, make a 2/2 when it dies. 2-hit zombie, 4 mana 4/2 menace is okay, but you know, very fragile, so be careful of this. 2 mana 2/1 lifelink is fine, you know, also very fragile. It activates your life gain stuff, so that's okay. Epicure of Blood is actually better in white-black deck. So white-black, if you're playing white-black deck, this actually raises in value, yeah? For 5 mana 4/4, you get the ability of whenever you gain life, your opponent loses a life. So if you're the life gain deck, then you can just sit there and just keep on pinging your opponent, you know? 2 mana 2/2s are never bad. 3 mana 3/2 Flash is... I predict that this card is going to be really good when it starts because people don't know that this card exists. 3 mana 3/2 Flash, you can play anytime, so you can play even when your opponent is attacking. But just... yeah, like, people are going to get used to this, and the 3 mana 3/2 is like... it's okay, you know? Infectious Horror is a 4 mana 2/2. Whenever it attacks, each opponent loses 2 life. So it's kind of like a 4 mana 4/2, but the stat line really doesn't make it too happy. So it's not really a happy creature. So yeah. It's literally a black version of Pouncing Cheetah, exactly. And Pouncing Cheetah wasn't that amazing anyways. And of course now we have the bottom tier. 6 mana 6/5 vanilla creature for black. You really don't want this, but once again, if you have no late game, then you might have to play this. You know, the sad play it. We have a 1 mana 0/3 that you can pay 2 mana, tap it to suck your opponent for 1. A little bit of life gain, I guess. It's not the good life gain cards, but sometimes you just need this. Macabre Waltz is a very good late game card if you have a lot of good creatures. Mind Rot discards your opponent for 2 cards, usually not too good in limited. Inferno Scarring is an enchantment that buffs the creature's attack, and then also when the creature dies, you draw a card. Usually not too good to be worth a card. Duress is mainly a sideboard card if your opponent has like a really busted Planeswalker or something like that. And we also have 2 mana, suck your opponent for 3 life. And that's all it does. So it doesn't really advance on the board, so not too good. So yeah, there you go. Black commons got a little shafted. But you guys will be happy to know that the black uncommons are actually pretty decent. The best black uncommon, Murder, is 3 mana, destroys a creature. That's it. It doesn't need to say destroy a creature that doesn't have flying or whatever. It just destroys a creature. 3 mana, instant. Poggers, okay? Very good card. Secondly, we have Vampire Sovereign. 5 mana, you get a 3/4 flying, which is already bonkers. And when she comes into the battlefield, she sucks your opponent for 3. That means she basically has haste. And she restores some life to you. That's just like... that's insane, okay? Like, insane. 5 mana 3/4 flying is already really good. And the suck 3 is like a 6 life health swing. And you get this immediately too. So, yeah. Great creature. Gravedigger is always good in any limited set it's in. When you play this, you get to revive a card back to your hand. So, you know, you choose one of your big cards. Or, in Dreamland, you have 2 Gravediggers, and you can keep on Gravediggering your Gravediggers, and you get unlimited value, which, you know, it's definitely possible. Alright, onwards to the next cards. Fellow Spector's not bad. For 4 mana, you get a 1/3 flying. When it enters the battlefield, your opponent discards a card, and whenever your opponent discards a card, they lose 2 life. So it's basically a 2-for-1. Yeah, 2-for-1s are great. And finally, Nightmare's Thirst. Very good card if you're in the life gain deck, right? For 1 mana, you gain 1 life, and then a creature gets -X equal to the life you gained this turn. So if you have a very, you know, if you have some life linking creatures, you play this, you just basically kill something. So very, very strong. Almost to tier 2. Reassembling Skeleton is really good if you can make use of it, right? 2 mana 1/1, very low stats, but you can pay 2 mana to immediately put it back to the battlefield tapped, like immediately. You don't even need to recast it. It just boop, you know? You do need some combo of this, because otherwise it's just like a chump blocker, and chump blocker is just kind of asking to die. But yeah, usually this is going to be great. You just probably want to put this in your deck. 1 mana 2/2 to end the battlefield tapped is still a 1 mana 2/2. I mean, that's really good. Plague Mare is a 3 mana 2/2 that makes all your opponent's creatures -1/-1 to end a turn. So if your opponent is playing something like red which has a lot of 1 health creatures, and you play Plague Mare, kaboom! You just win the game, yeah? Against some decks, this literally is just a 3-mana 2/2. So, it's really situational. Or like, what's it called? It's not. It's still good as a creature, right? But it's situationally insane or situationally mediocre. So it really depends on your matchup. 5 mana to resurrect a creature from your graveyard is not bad, especially if you open something like Vampire Sovereign. Ravenous Harpy is the sacrifice creature that's really good in black-red. You can pay 1 mana to sacrifice a creature at instant speed to put a counter on the Harpy. This is also a flying creature, so it could get really big. And finally, Blood Divination. For 4 mana, you sack a creature and draw 3 cards. So if you sack something like Reassembling Skeleton, then you get a lot of value because you didn't really actually sacrifice the creature. So that's good. And of course, thank you for reminding me that Rise on the Grave can target your opponent's graveyard as well. So it's a little bit more synergy. If your opponent has like a big bomb, you can resurrect it under your control. Sweet. And Stitcher's Supplier is the worst uncommon. You basically don't play this, okay? It's bad. 1 mana, 1/1. When it enters the battlefield or dies, so it triggers twice, put the top 3 cards of your library into your graveyard. You don't really need to put mill yourself like this, and you're playing a 1 mana 1/1. That's a no thanks from me. Onwards to the rares. The rares in black are reasonable. They're reasonable. They're not like bonkers, but they're okay. First up, we have Bone Dragon, 5 mana 5/4 flying. You can also pay 5 mana when it dies, exile 7 other cards, and then return to the battlefield, so you can cast this twice. I foresee this being cast twice in a limited game. So you play this as 5 mana 5/4, and then you can flash it back for another 5 mana 5/4. It's not bad. It's like good value, and 5 mana 5/4 flying is pretty thick. Demon Catastrophes is a 4 mana 6/6 flample that you need to sacrifice a creature to cast this. But 4 mana 6/6 flying and trample is just really good. Izaref, it's a 3/3 Death Touch that can reanimate, so that's always good. There's not a lot of mana sinks in these core sets, so having a mana sink is always good. Death Baron is really sweet. 3 mana 2/2 that gives your skeletons and other zombies you control +1/+1 and Death Touch. Now, of course, it's a lord, so if you have a lot of skeletons and you have a lot of zombies, this gets better. And Death Touch is a very good keyword because, just trade for everything. But what makes this even more bonkers in Limited is that there is a combo with a black common Skeleton Archer. Skeleton Archer says, when this enters the battlefield, it deals 1 damage to any target. Well, it is a skeleton. So if you give it Life Touch and it deals 1 damage to anything, it actually just kills it. So it becomes a 4 mana 3/3 kill something. So this is a very good combo. And of course, it just combos regularly with other zombies anyways. So just keep this in mind. Graveyard Marshal is a 2 mana 3/2 that you can pay 3 mana, remove a creature card from your graveyard, and make a 2/2 black zombie. So once again, all these mana payoffs, like mana sinks, are just really good in black. I like it. Tier 2, we have Open the Graves. 5 mana. Whenever a non-token creature dies that's under your control, you get a 2/2 black zombie. So everything becomes, when it dies, you get a 2/2. So, lots of value, especially if you have stuff like Reassembling Skeleton. You remember? The card just keeps on dying and keeps on coming back. So if you can kind of abuse this, then it's going to be great. Phylactery Lich is really hard to make work. But if you do, you get a big reward for it because it is a 3 mana 5/5 indestructible, so it cannot get destroyed. Indestructible means it cannot get destroyed. When it enters the battlefield, you put a Phylactery counter on an artifact. And when all Phylactery counters are gone, you sacrifice the Lich. So it's kind of cute, right? It's very flavorful. And your opponent probably doesn't have an artifact removal in their first game, right? They probably have to sideboard it in. So if you happen to make this work, then it's definitely a beating. But do keep in mind that it's triple black. So you got to be very black to play this. Lilia's Contract in Limited, it's just 5 mana, draw 4 cards, and you lose 4 life. The other one doesn't really work in this core set. 5 mana, draw 4 cards, and lose 4 life is fine. But make sure you're playing a little bit more an aggressive deck for this effect. I don't really like this in a control deck because, well, you're paying 5 mana to pass your turn, and you also lose 4 life. So be a bit more careful with this. And finally, Liliana, the Planeswalker version, is not that good. It's very weird that a Planeswalker is not good, but this one is not that good. Of course, it could be bonkers if you have the correct deck for it, but usually you just don't stick it in any black deck, right? So Liliana, 4 mana for 4 loyalty. A +1, you mill 3 yourself, and if you mill the zombie card, you suck them for 2 life. -2, you give something -6/-6 equal to the number of zombies you control. And for -3, which you can actually ultimate immediately when she play her, you can cast zombies cards from your graveyard this turn. So, you know, that's a lot of card advantage. This Planeswalker does nothing if you have 0 zombies. So be a little bit more careful when you play Liliana. And when you draft Liliana, make sure you draft a buttload of zombies. Alright, and of course tier 3, Fraying Omnipotence is really good if you're an aggro deck. So just keep that in mind, otherwise you're just pretty much gonna shrug off this card. And Infernal Reckoning is unplayable, so I just don't play this card. So yeah, overall black is not strong in the commons, but if you open a very good uncommon or a rare in black, then yeah, just make sure you get the commons of the other colors, because yeah, black commons are kind of subpar. Alright, onwards to red, the color of Smork and aggro. The best card in red is Shock. For 1 mana, you get to deal 2 damage to any target. And of course, any target means your opponent's face is included, so you can just shock your opponent's face if they have 2 life and win the game. Very good remove spell. Electrify is a little bit more expensive. For 4 mana, deal 4 damage to target creature. So this does not go face, but 4 damage is a lot of damage. It effectively kills any common, right? Or most of the non-green commons. So very strong. And number 3, I have Sure Strike. Sure Strike is an insane combat trick. For 2 mana, you target creature, it gets +3 attack and gains first strike. So it attacks first. If it attacks first and it kills the creature doesn't deal damage back. So this just wins any combat. And it also deals, it's also +3 attack. That's a lot of damage, right? So these are the tier 1 cards. Spartan Dragon also made tier 1. It's a 5 mana 3/3 flying. You can also pay 3 extra mana when you play it, so 8 mana total. And if you do that, you can deal 3 damage to any target. So it's a 5 mana card or an 8 mana card, which is, you know, it's reasonable. You're most likely going to play this as a 5 mana 3/3 flying, which is fine. 5 mana 3/3 flying is good. Alright, onwards to the tier 2 cards. The best tier 2 card is, of course, a Goblin Instigator. For 2 mana, you get to make a 1/1 red Goblin token, and itself it's a 1/1 Goblin. So you get 2 1/1s for 2 mana, which is fine. That's fine. Creatures, more creatures, great. Havoc Devils is a 4 mana 4/3 with Trample. Trample is very good on creatures like these, because when you're red, you just want to go face. And even if this gets chump blocked, it deals its remaining damage to the face. Face is good, face is life. Bolgar Brute is a pretty strong creature too. It was in Magic Origins. 3 mana 3/2 of Menace. It can't be single blocked. So yeah, it's easier to go face when they have to double block your creature, right? Goblin Motivator, 1 mana 1/1 that you can give other creatures haste. What better way to smoke your opponent than to just haste them immediately when it comes to play? And then these creatures are all kind of interchangeable. We have a 3 mana 4/2. We have a 4 mana 3/3 haste. We have a 2 mana 2/1 that when it comes to play deal 2 damage to face. We have a 3 mana 2/2 that you can sacrifice to act 2 mana. So these are all kind of just red creatures. They're all kind of interchangeable. You can just pick this up and be very happy with it, because when you play red, you just need creatures. It doesn't really matter what they are. You just want creatures, and you just want to turn them sideways, remove their threats, keep on bashing their face in. So yeah, you're just fine. Just any of these creatures are just interchangeable. And of course, we have Act of Treason as the last tier 2 card. What better way when your opponent plays a big fatty to just gain control of it, untap it, and it gains haste, and you can smoke them back at him. Yeah, it's just very great. Of course, this also has a combo with Black-Red Sacrifice. So if you can sacrifice the creature after you take control of it, you don't actually return it back to their field. It's just dead, right? So pretty good card there as well. And of course, we got the bottom tier of cards that you don't really want to play, but sometimes you just gotta. Tormenting Voice, really good with Enigma Trick, so keep that in mind. Fire Elemental is a 5-mana 5/4 with no effects. These are just better because they're cheaper. Trumpet Blast, attacking creatures gets +2 attack until end of turn, so you can smart them out of nowhere. This is really good if you have a lot of small dudes, of course. Lava Axe is 5 damage to face. Usually not that good because you can't remove a creature, but maybe you're hyper aggressive. Crash Through is 1 mana. Creatures you control gain trample, draw a card, not too good. And a Sideboard Smelt if your opponent is playing a bonkers artifact. The best rare uncommon is Lightning Strike. 2 mana to deal 3 damage to any target. Once again, cards that can deal damage to face is just great. But can I interest you in a 6 mana 4/4 Flying Dragon Haste? Play this, smoke your opponent, boom. It's still a 6 mana 4/4 flying. Volcanic Dragon is great. The other tier 1 cards are Volley Veteran. For 4 mana, you get a 4/2. When it comes to play, it deals damage to a creature an opponent controls equal to the number of goblins. So it counts itself, right? So if you play it by itself, it's a 4 mana 4/2 deal 1 damage. If you have other goblins, it might be a 4 mana 4/2 deal 2, 3, or even Flame Tongue Kavu, you know? So this is great if you have a lot of goblins, so yeah, you can build around it. I think it's actually good if you have like just 1 or 2 goblins, right? Like you don't really need that many goblins to make this work. Even dealing 1 damage is okay. And finally, we have Siegebreaker Giant. 5 mana 6/3, trample, goes face really well. And you can also pay 4 mana to make a creature not be able to block this turn. Yeah, this is just a good mana sink for red. Once again, just remove their blockers. If they can't block, they are dead. Gutter Snipe is, you know, the Enigma Trick archetype. Whenever you cast an instant or sorcery, it deals 2 damage to face. So really good if you can't attack in and you have a lot of instants and sorceries to cast. Lightning Mare is a 2 mana 3/1 that can buff itself, so that can't be bad. Fire Finish just removes a creature. It just removes any creature, so it's a 6 mana removal spell. Very expensive, but sometimes, you know, you're playing a bigger red deck that you kind of want these effects. Teutonic Rift makes it so that no creatures that don't have... If a creature has no flying, they can't block. So basically everything can't block. So you just 4 mana, once again, smart your opponent. Thud, for 1 mana, you sack a creature and you throw it to any target. So it deals damage equal to its power to any target. So you can throw, for example, a Volley Veteran in their face and deal 4 damage. This is very good to close out games. You know, it's just good reach if you're playing the mega aggressive deck. Infernal Hellion, 7/3 trample, but when after this attacks, you have to shuffle it back to your library. So it basically kind of kills itself after it deals damage, but this does have some combos with a rare that we're going to see later. And once again, 7 trample damage is still quite a bit. And what better way to deal damage to this and then thud it after it deals damage to deal 14 damage in a turn. That's really good. Dragon Egg, I have it as pretty low, but this card is actually better in a more control-y deck. So this is not a very aggressive card, right? It's a 3 mana 0/2 defender, so it can't attack. Like, if you're playing red, why are you playing a card that can't attack? Well, if you're playing more mid-range or more control deck, then you want this. Because when this dies, you get a 2/2 dragon with fire breathing. So you can pay a single red mana to give it +1 attack. So you just basically wait till they attack, chump block something, and then you spawn a flyer. And the 3 mana 2/2 flyer is pretty good. So that's sweet. And double cast is pretty much unplayable. You don't want to double the next instant or sorcery you cast for 2 mana. It's also double red. It's very limiting, so I would not want to draft this card. Alright, and red rares are pretty bonkers. Alright, this is a very good reason to go into red if you open a good rare card. Banefire I have as number 1. Banefire is an X spell. So it's actually my reveal card, so that was awesome. It's a sorcery. You pay any amount of X. So if you pay 6 mana, X is 5. Because you have to pay a Genetic red, right? It deals X damage to any target. And if X is 5 or more, it cannot be countered. And the damage can't be prevented. So if you pay 10 mana to do this, you can deal 9 damage to your opponent's face. Like, boom. Kaboom. Spend all your mana, kaboom. You can also kill a creature of this. If your opponent has a, you know, creature that you really need to kill. So Banefire is just Slam Jam. Why this is better than all of these cards is because you can also play this in non-red decks, right? You can play this in a blue-green deck. Because this only requires a single red, and it's a late game card. So if you're playing a blue-green deck and you have like a red mana floating somewhere at late game, you can also use Banefire. So this card is just great. It fits into any deck, right? Alright, onwards to the dragons. They're actually in the red deck, yeah? We have Laughless Dragon Queen. 6 mana, 6/6. Whenever another non-token dragon comes in the battlefield under your control, you make a 5/5 dragon. Oh, I'm not finished. You can pay 2 mana. All dragons you control get +1 attack until end of turn. Wait, what? That is actually just bonkers. It's already a 6 mana 6/6 flying creature, and it says if you play another dragon when this is in play, you win the game because you also get the dragon and you get a free 5/5, and you can also buff all your dragons. This card is ridiculous, dude. Next up, we have Demanding Dragon, 5 mana 5/5 flying, so really good stats already. And when it enters the battlefield, your opponent gets to choose. They either sacrifice a creature, or they deal 5 damage to themselves. So this effectively is haste. Do note that if your opponent doesn't have a creature to sacrifice, they have to take the 5 damage. Yeah, this guy is also bonkers. Right? I'm assuming that you're gonna, when you play red, you're gonna play 1 drop, 2 drop, 3 drop, 4 drop, remove their guy, right? And then play this so that if they sacrifice a creature, it's bad, and if they take 5 damage, it's also bad. So you put your opponent in a very bad spot. Next up, we have Sark Ins Unsealing. Super strong card. Holy, oh, this card is insane. So it's an enchantment, and it actually doesn't do anything when you play it, but it does something afterwards. It's a rewarded card. So let me magnifying glass this. Whenever you cast a creature spell with 4, 5, or 6 power, so the front side, you can deal 4 damage to any target, which includes face, okay? So you have this, you play Demanding Dragon, deal 4 damage to this guy, and then you still get a creature, right? However, if you cast a creature spell with power 7 or greater, this deals 4 damage to each opponent and each creature and planeswalker they control. So you AoE them for 4 if you cast a creature spell with 7. There's really only one red creature that has 7 power. You have to look for green for more powerful creatures, but that was the Hellion, right? So the Hellion was very playable if you have Sark Ins Unsealing. You just AoE them. And of course, even the 4, 5, 6 version, it's just ridiculous. You just need to activate this one time, and you're happy, right? You activate this twice, and that's, yeah, you're just rigging this. So just boom, you know? Spit Flame, 3 mana, deal 4 damage to a creature. That's really efficient. And whenever a dragon enters the battlefield, you can pay 1 red mana to pick it back up from the graveyard and Spit Flame again. So really good recursion. Even if you cast this once, it's great. And finally, we got Goblin Trashmaster. Other goblins you control get a buff, and you can also throw goblins to destroy an artifact. This effect is not going to be come too often, but you know, your opponent might have a Sigil Sword of Valor on, for example, that you want to kill, right? It's reasonable. It's okay. We'll take it. Alright, almost to the tier 2 cards. We have Dismissive Pyromancer. 2 mana 2/2 is already fine. You can pay 1 mana to loot, and you can also pay 3 mana, sacrifice this, and deal 4 damage. So once again, you can turn this into a kill spell, and those are usually pretty good. Another 2 mana 2/2 rare. Pay 1 mana, sacrifice a creature, and you can remove the top card of your library and you can play it this turn. However, you still have to pay its cost. What's really good about this is because it's kind of like pseudo protection, right? Where if your opponent actually kills your creature, you can sacrifice in response, get a card out of it. You can also play a land. So this is reasonable. Like 2 mana 2/2s are just fine. And finally, we have Sarkin, Fireblood, the Planeswalker for red. 3 mana for 3 loyalty. You can +1 loyalty to discard a card and draw a card. You can have +1 to add 2 mana to spend on dragon spells. And if he actually gets a 7, so if your opponent doesn't actually attack him at all, you get to make 4 5/5 red dragon creature tokens. The only problem I have Sarkin is that you can't really play this on turn 3. Well, you could if your opponent has nothing, right? But if your opponent has a creature, then Sarkin just gets bashed in the face because it actually doesn't really spawn a creature. And you're really just like doing the discard a card, draw a card until you have a dragon, right? And if you have a dragon, it might actually make your mana a little bit more awkward because it's limited, right? So not too good in limited, but you would still play it, right? I mean, it's still fine, but it's not bonkers like the other cards. And easy to note that the Mythic red card and also Alpine Moon, these are actually just unplayable. You do not play these cards at all in your limited decks. It's just unplayable, right? 10 mana, exile the top 7 cards, and then add 10 mana. You can cast the cards. It's not gonna work. You're not gonna get to 10 mana limited. It's not happening. And the other one is Alpine Moon. You make a land, lose all abilities, and tap to add 1 mana of any color. There are no lands in this set that can make more than 1 mana, so you do not need to change your opponent's lands. So this is just bad. And that is red. Green got some pretty good cards. Tier 1 cards include Rapid Bite. 2 mana, a creature you control deals damage equal to its power to target creature you don't control. So it gets to just shoot something. Just keep in mind that Rapid Bite is not a fight effect. It just deals damage. So if you have a 4/4, and this is deal 4 damage, right? That's great. Druid of the Cowl, 2 mana 1/3. Thank you, Jupi. 2 mana 1/3. Mana Dork, right? So it's a 2 mana 1/3 that's basically another extra land for you. So it's good to wrap into your more expensive cards because green has a lot of big creatures you need a lot of mana for. So that's just great. And interestingly enough, tier number 3 card in green I have is Oakenform. For 3 mana, you get to enchant a creature and give it +3/+3. This is such a big buff, my god, okay? Think of this card as a 3 mana 3/3 haste creature. And then you can see kind of how good it is, right? Because you equip it into a creature, you get to attack immediately. And then that's just ridiculous, right? A +3/+3, especially if you put it on a flyer, it's gonna be such a beating. So yeah, once again, you don't want too many of these effects, but the first few Oakenforms are gonna be bonkers. You put it on a trample creature, you're gonna be very happy with this as well. Just like 3 mana 3/3 haste, ridiculous. Colossal Dreadmore also made tier 1 because it's a core set. You know, the power level of cards are not going to be that high. So yeah, Colossal Dreadmore actually is really good. That's what you wanted to do in 6 mana. 6 mana, 6/6 trample. Your opponent can't really deal with this, and if they chump block it, they still take the damage. So that's a clappy. Alright, let's run through these tier 2 cards really quickly. Elvish Rejuvenator is the best tier 2 card in my opinion. When you play her, she's a 1/1, and you also get to ramp, right? You look at the top 5 cards, put a land onto the battlefield tapped. So it's effectively a Druid of the Cowl, but not as good because it's 3 mana and it's a little bit smaller. But ramp is ramp. What do you want? It's still a 1/1. Very nice. We got a 3 mana 2/2 Death Touch. Very good combo of Rapid Bite because it's Death Touch. It just kills anything. So if you have Daggerback Basilisk and Rapid Bite becomes a murder. Alright, so just keep that interaction in mind. There's a 3 mana 3/3. There's a 4 mana 4/3. There's a 4 mana 2/4 of Reach. These are all fine creatures. They're all just like, you know, mid-range creatures that you just want. Titanic Growth is a very good combat trick. 2 mana to give it +4/+4. It basically wins all combats. You can also use this to kill your opponent if they only have a few life remaining, which is great. Talons of Wildwood is a little bit sneakily good, okay? So 2 mana, enchant a creature, give it +1/+1 and trample. Trample is the key word here that's really good for the aura because your opponent can't chump block it, right? If you put it into something big like a Courser even, right? Because the 4/4 trample is really good. You can also pick it back up from your graveyard for 3 mana, so you can reuse this. So really good in the long game. You don't want too many of these because at the end of the day, 2 mana, give it +1/+1. It's not that big a buff, but the recursion definitely helps. You just buff every single creature. Highline Game is a 2 mana 2/1 that gains 2 life when it dies. This is actually better than a 2 mana 2/2 Vigilance because the life gain is actually pretty useful. You know, a 2 mana 2/2 is not that big a difference from a 2 mana 2/1. So I think, but these are still pretty close. I mean, they're just very close to each other. Like, I would prefer Highline Game a little bit more than Green with Sentinel because last set we had Sun Sentinel, which is effectively a 2 mana 2/2 in white, and it was barely played. It wasn't that good. And Thornhide Wolves and Rocks Oracles are your 5 drops. If you did not get any of these good fatty creatures, then I guess you can settle for these. 5 mana 4/5 vanilla creature and 5 mana 4/2 when it enters the battlefield, draw a card. Like, these are reasonable. If you get unlucky and you don't get any Dreadmaws. And of course, finally, we have the tier 3 cards. They are all sideboard material. Plummet destroys a target creature flying, so you bring this in if you're playing against blue or white decks. There's Naturalize if your opponent has a very strong artifact or enchantment. Root Snare prevents all combat damage that will be dealt this turn. This is more for control decks. It's very, very fringe. And of course, a 1 mana 0/3 Defender of Reach is not good. Unless you have Arcades, right? So you're probably not going to see this too often. Alright, onwards to uncommons in green. Let's see if they're good. They're actually pretty reasonably okay. The best green uncommon is Vine Mare. 5 mana for 4 mana, not 5, 4. Wow, so cheap. 4 mana 5/3, hexproof. So your opponent cannot target this with anything. Why this is insane is because it's 5 attack for 4 mana. It is hexproof. You put an aura on this, you win the game. That's basically what it says, okay? Put an aura on this card, you win the game. +3/+3, 8/6, hexproof, GG's, okay? Very good card. It also has randomly can't be blocked by black creatures too, so that could be relevant. The number 2 uncommon is Dry Green Seeker. For 2 mana, you get a 1/3. You can tap this for free, so just tap it, no cost. Look at the top card. If it's a land card, you get to draw it, and if it's not, you get to put it back. Wow, 2 mana 1/3, draw a card half the time. Very sweet. And of course, we have some fatties here. 5 mana 5/5 Vigilance, 7 mana 7/7 Trample, and can block an additional creature each combat. This is rarely gonna come up. But yeah, fatty creatures for green. You like them. There's also a last one for tier 1 here. For 5 mana, you get a Declare Dominance sorcery. Give a creature +3/+3, and then all creatures able to block this turn, do so. So, very, very good if you want to force a trade. Or you can also play this on a small creature, make them block all the small creature, and then use your big creatures to go face. That's really good. You can also put this on the Death Touch creature, right? The Basilisk. If yes, it's a 5/5 Death Touch, so it basically kills everything, because Death Touch means that it only deals 1. If it deals 1 damage to something, it kills it, right? So boom, 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 board wipe. Sneakily good. Alright, tier 2, we have a card that hates on artifacts or enchantments, which is this is pretty main deckable. I think it's fine. Gift of Paradise, make 2 colors of anything, which is good ramp spell. Gear per Guide is reasonable. 3 mana 3/2 of extra text, if your opponent is playing small creatures. Druid of Horns, really good payoff spell if you have a lot of auras. 4 mana 2/3, so pretty small, but whenever you cast an aura spell that targets him, you get a 3/3. So all your aura spells comes with a free 3/3 creature. So you have to keep this in mind. Once again, you have to draft around this. And Majesty wants you to play more creatures of high power to draw a card. Reasonable. These 2 kind of suck. Recollect is not that good. 3 mana to pick up a card from the graveyard. Very expensive. And Blanchwood Armor requires you to play a lot of forests, but just play Oaken Form. Oaken Form is a better Blanchwood Armor, for sure. Last page. Alright, we're nearing the end. We have green Mythics and Rares. And wow, green got really busted Mythics and Rares. Very, very strong. Palaka Worm is the number 1 run. For 7 mana, you get a 7/7 Trample. Once again, Trample is very good in these types of situation. When it enters the battlefield, you gain 7 life. And when it dies, you draw a card. That is just so stacked. Like, this card is just stacked. You play this, you're just super happy. Even if your opponent kills this, you draw a card still, and you gain 7 life. Just everything in one, Vivian Reed is the green Planeswalker, and this Planeswalker is great. For 5 mana, you get a 5 loyalty Planeswalker. You can +1 to draw a card, basically. It says look at the top 4, pick a creature or land, and then add it to your hand. Basically, it's just draw a card. -3, destroy an artifact, a enchantment, or a creature flying, which is actually the things that you kind of need to kill anyways, right? So this just removes a thing. which is great. And if you get to -8, you win the game because creatures you control get +2/+2, vigilance, trample, and indestructible. So if you ever get to -8, you just win the game because your opponents can't even destroy your creatures. So Vivian Reed is a very good planeswalker. You want to play green if you open her. Next up, we have Gore Claw. Gore Claw is a 4-mana 4/3 bear, legendary bear, and it says creatures that have power 4 or greater cost 2 less to cast. That is ridiculous. That is actually just bonkers already, right? So you can actually cast like Colossal Dreadmaw for 4 mana. And this applies to all your creatures. Like, this is just bonkers. Oh, by the way, did I mention that it also has an additional ability? Whenever Gore Claw attacks, each creature you control that's 4 power greater gets +1/+1 and trample. It affects herself too. So she attacks as a 5/4 trample. So you're telling me this is a 4-mana 5/4 trample that ramps my expensive creatures, which I probably want to play anyways? That's ridiculous, right? Gore Claw on turn 4, Pelakka on turn 5. Next up, we have Prodigious Growth. This can actually just like... This is just wins games out of nowhere. 6 mana, make a creature +7/+7 and trample. Oh god. And of course, the flavor text is comes into play as well. Look how cute it is now. Yeah, you can just win games out of nowhere with this. Of course, your opponent can kill your creature in response, but don't play it when your opponent has open mana. Play it when your opponent has no open mana and just smart them, you know? Vivian's Invocation is very expensive, but also very good. 7 mana, look at the top 7 cards, put a creature onto the battlefield for free, and then that creature deals damage equal to its power to another creature. So it basically rapid bites. This is just like a straight 2-for-1, right? You get a free creature, you shoot something else, it's a 2-for-1. Perfect. Great. And finally, we have Hungering Hydra, which is the worst of this bunch, but still really good. So that's saying a lot. Hungering Hydra is an X creature, so you can spend any mana to play it, and it comes with X counters. So if you pay 6 mana, it's a 5/5, right? The X, you need to keep in mind you have to pay green. It can be blocked by more than one creature, so they can only single block it. So if they have a lot of small creatures, they can't just all block it. It eats one thing at a time. Oh, by the way, whenever it's dealt damage, put that many counters on it. So it just grows bigger and bigger and bigger. Oh, this is a big-ass Hydra, man. Just be careful that when you play this, you might still get wrecked by flyers, because they can just chump this 1 by 1, feed the Hydra, and then kill your flyers. But, you know, it's an X creature spell, so it basically gets better as the game progresses. So, it just can't be bad. Alright, onwards to tier 2. And tier 2 is saying a lot, because these cards are still really good, yeah? Thorn Lieutenant. 2 mana, 2/3. When this becomes the target of a spell or ability an opponent controls, so if your opponent tries to kill it or tries to, you know, cast something on it, you get a 1/1, so it's a little bit bonus. And you can pay 6 mana to give it +4/+4, so it's a 6/7. So it's a good mana sink. It's a 2 mana, 2/3. You're basically always going to play this. It's a good card. And finally, we have Runic Armosaur. It's a 3 mana, 2/5. It's a very big butt. No, not the butt. The butt. The 5 health. Okay? God. Whenever an opponent activates an ability of a creature or a land that isn't a mana ability, you draw a card. So this is rarely going to come up. I mean, it might come up with some, you know, activations of like, you know, Goblin Instigator or something like that, and you get to draw a card. But you're mainly playing this for 3 mana, 2/5. 3 mana, 2/5 is good. And finally, we have the pretty much unplayable cards. Elvish Clanncaller is very close to playable, but not really. 2 mana, 1/1 that your other elves control get +1/+1, so it buffs your other elves. But it's a 1/1, so it's kind of meh. You can pay 6 mana, tap it, and search your library for the same card and put it onto the battlefield. But I mean, come on, it's limited. You're not going to draft 2. You're not going to draft 3 of these. It's just never going to happen. So yeah, you probably don't want to play a 2 mana 1/1 that buffs some of your elves. You know, it's not that good. Gigantosaurus. 5 mana 10/10. Why this is unplayable is because it requires quintuple forest. Alright, it requires quintuple green mana. most limited decks are gonna be 2 colors, and if you're 2 colors, you can't play this. You can only play this in mono green. So, like, you know, if you draft just a green deck, then by all means play this. But you're probably not gonna play this. If you draft a green deck, play this. If you don't play this. And finally, Scapeshift is literally a 4 mana do nothing. That's bad. 4 mana do nothing is a bad card, so don't play this card. And finally, all right, this is the last slide. We have the land cycle. In Core 2019, each pack can come with a dual land in placement of a basic land. So if you get this, you know, you can play it if you're that color. But just note that these are not tier 1, okay? These are tier 2. So even, for example, if you're in blue-red, right? You will still pick a good blue card over the Highland Lake, for example. Because even though it produces blue or red mana, it enters the battlefield tapped. So it's not like it's bonkers or whatever, right? So you pick this if you're in the color, and if there's no other good creatures to pick from. And finally, these 2 cards just are, they don't produce colored mana, so they suck. Yeah, they basically suck. And of course, we cannot end the review without talking about Amaz's top 5 cards in the set. So if you're live right now, you can actually, you know, say some cards right now that you think is gonna be top 5, and if you get them right, how about this? I will give up 5 beta keys for Magic Arena for each one that you get right. So for number 5, let's see who actually guesses number 5 correctly. Gigantosaurus. Gigantosaurus, dude. Alright. So number 5, we have Tezzeret is number 5. Tezzeret Artifice Master, the Planeswalker that makes Thopters. So this is really good. I see Shariam. You said Tezzeret, so that's the first one I see. You get a beta key, congratulations. I will send it to you later. Tezzeret is really strong. Once again, you play this, it protects itself, makes a swarmy army of Thopter tokens, and it's gonna be great. Alright, next up, number 4, we have Patient Rebuilding. I think this is actually one of the more bonkers decks. I don't see anybody saying I don't see anybody saying that, so nobody gets that right. But yeah, you play this, your opponent is in such an awkward position, they have to kill you in X amount of turns. You can just sit there, remove their creatures, yada yada yada. Number 3, Leonin War Leader. For 4 mana, you get 4/4 and you make an army of cats. Really good if you have a combat trick and stuff like that. Just insane. Number 2. What is number 2? It is Resplendent Angel. I'm pretty sure someone said Resplendent Angel. 3 mana, 3 flyer is just ridiculous. And the number 1 card is actually Banefire. I can't believe it. They gave me Banefire, the number 1 limited preview card for me to review, so that's awesome. Once again, the fact that this can go face, and the fact that you can play this in any deck makes this actually just bonkers. Banefire is amazing. You see Banefire, you pick it. It doesn't really matter what deck you're in. You're gonna love it. And that is my Core Set 2019 preview. I mean the limited review. I hope you enjoyed it. Let me know what you guys think, and we'll see you in Core 2019. I'll be streaming Magic Arena. I'll be streaming Magic Online when it comes out, so hope to see you online.